second. So last night, amid all this, President Trump delivered the State of the Union address. He highlighted his achievements from the past year and the past 3 years in office.
Meanwhile, today, Senate Republicans are expected to vote to acquit President Donald Trump in the impeachment trial. Jesse Tenor is live in Washington, D.C. this morning with the latest. Jesse, good morning to you. Let's start with the State of the Union address. Quite a scene at the Capitol last night. What were some of the main takeaways from what the president spoke about?
Good morning. During President Trump's 78-minute speech, he didn't talk about impeachment once, but the divisiveness that has come from it was definitely on full display, especially when you saw that friction between the president and Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Before he even began his speech, she reached out her hand for him to shake, and he ignored it. And then at the end of the speech, notably the most memorable moment that everybody's been talking about, she rips up her copy of the president's speech, essentially just inches away from him. And you really saw that divisiveness play out between members of Congress as well. Republicans sitting on one side who would stand and cheer when the president would tout his accomplishments, from jobs to immigration to health care, and then Democrats on the other side would be sitting there in silence, and you could really tell from their faces just how they felt.
So, Jesse, how else have lawmakers responded? What are we hearing from them this morning?
One of the big takeaways is health care. Of course, that's one of the main issues, too, that they've been focused on as far as legislation goes. And that's what Democrats and Republicans have been kind of pushing. So Democrats last night, you heard them chanting H.R. 3, and they were holding up their three fingers. And that is legislation that the House was able to pass that would lower the cost of prescription drugs. They did that in response to the president saying, if you deliver me a bill, I will sign it. So they're saying, well, wait, what about ours? Why is the Republican-controlled Senate tying it up? Republican leadership there and the president haven't been happy with the way that they lower the cost of prescription drugs. So they've been trying to come up with their own plan, but that hasn't come out yet. And then Democrats have also been trying to pressure the president to not repeal the Affordable Care Act. And you saw that come up last night, too, as far as pushes to curb the opioid crisis in our country.
All right, so it wasn't really referenced at all during the State of the Union, but there is the Senate impeachment trial kind of looming over everything there at the Capitol. Today is when it's expected to wrap up. How do we think the vote's going to play out on the Senate impeachment trial?
We do expect the Senate to ultimately acquit President Trump and largely down party lines, but we still could see some new developments today when it comes to some vulnerable Democrats and even some vulnerable Republicans. Over these past 3 days, every senator, all 100 of them, has been able to go to the Senate floor and talk for about 10 minutes about how they plan to vote and why, but we still haven't heard from some of them. One of the most notable, Alabama Senator Doug Jones, he's arguably the most vulnerable Democrat, and so even though this is potentially the last day of the impeachment process, we still could see some new developments here and there, but it ultimately won't change the outcome that we're expecting.
We will watch that today as it happens. Jesse Tenor, live from Washington this morning. Thank you so much, Jesse. All right, it's 5:08 this morning.